Eid al-Adha celebrated a new normal for Muslims nationwide. Law against racist landlords to be tabled in Parliament next year. Hello and good evening. Thanks for joining us. You're watching News at 10 with me, Muhammad Amin Carlos. Well, the Election Commission, EC, was officially notified by the Sabah State Legislative Assembly yesterday regarding the dissolution of the 15th Sabah State Assembly. And EC Secretary Iqmal Ruddin Ishaq said, according to Article 21, subsection 4 of the Sabah State Constitution, the state election has to be held within 60 days of the date of dissolution. In a statement today, he said, therefore, the EC will hold a special meeting to discuss the conduct of the election. Iqmal Ruddin said the date for the meeting would be announced later. Sabah Chief Minister Dato Seri Muhammad Shafi Abdal had announced the dissolution of the State Assembly in Kota Kinabalu yesterday. The Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah Riayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah joined Muslims to perform Eid al-Adha prayers at Tengku Ampuan Afzan Mosque in Kuantan, Pahang today. Well, His Majesty, accompanied by the Raja Permaisuri Agong, Tunku Haja Aziza Amina Maimuna Iskandaria, arrived at the mosque at 8:25 a.m. and the royal couple was received by Menteri Besar, Dato Seri Wan Rosli Wan Ismail and Pahang state government leaders. Also present at the prayer was the son of the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, who is the regent of Pahang, Tengku Hasan Al-Ibrahim Alam Shah Al-Sultan Abdullah, and they were dressed in matching grey baju Melayu. Well, the prayer was led by the chief imam of the mosque, Muhammad Hafiz Suhaili, while the sermon was read by Kuantan Qadi Abdulaziz Abdul Karim. The Yang di-Pertuan Agong also witnessed the sacrificial ritual of 9 cows for the occasion in the compound of the mosque before departing. Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin today performed Eid al-Adha prayers with the congregation at Saidina Umar Al-Khattab Mosque, Bukit Damansara, Kuala Lumpur, under the environment of the new normal. Well, the Prime Minister, who wore a yellow and red baju Melayu, complete with a sampin, was also wearing a face mask and brought his own prayer mat in compliance with the Standard Operating Procedure, the SOP, to prevent the spread of COVID-19 infection. The prayer, which began at 8 a.m., was led by Imam Muhammad Fikri Sheikh Hamid. The chief imam of the mosque, Muhammad Rahimi P. Ramli, said the congregation present also had their body temperature scanned and observed a 1 meter physical distancing inside the mosque. He said the mosque had limited the congregation to 700, with 600 members of the parish being given special weekly pass to enter the mosque, while 100 special passes were given to walk-in Muslims today. Well, the effectiveness of military and police personnel in carrying out their duties has successfully defended Malaysia as a sovereign, independent nation, enabling the people of various races and religions to live together in peace and harmony. The Sultan of Perak, Sultan Nazrin Muizzuddin Shah, said in upholding the trust to defend the sovereignty of the country's independence and fulfilling the responsibility of preserving the peace of the country, many security forces personnel lost their lives or were injured. In his royal address, the Perak ruler said Eid al-Adha this year is celebrated on Warriors' Day to appreciate and commemorate the services and sacrifices of the security forces, especially those who were killed in the line of duties.
Pertahanan negara akan menjadi rapuh jika warga yang terdiri daripada pelbagai kaum, pelbagai agama gagal menjalinkan hubungan yang harmoni.
He said this at the Eid al-Adha and Warriors' Day celebration at Saidputra Army Camp in Ipoh today. Sultan Nazrin said the Malaysian Armed Forces and the Royal Malaysia Police, PDRM, have also succeeded in upholding the principles of undivided loyalty to the king and country. As a ruler who is sensitive to all issues, Sultan Nazrin said that leaders, either in word or deed, must set an example to cultivate the spirit of mutual understanding and respect so that the people live in harmony in a peaceful and prosperous country. Well, a total of 12 new positive COVID-19 cases, 7 of them locally transmitted, and 1 new death were reported in the country today. Health Director General Dr. Noor Hisham Abdullah said this brought the cumulative number of positive cases in the country to 8,976 cases, while there were a total of 125 deaths due to the virus to date. Now, of the 7 local transmission cases, he said 5 involved Malaysians and 2 were non-citizens. In a statement today, he said 2 cases involving Malaysians were detected from the Sivaganga PUI, or Patients Under Investigation cluster in Kedah, as well as 1 each in Johor, Selangor and Negeri Sembilan. Now, as of today, Dr. Noor Hisham said 262 people from the Sivaganga cluster were screened for COVID-19. Now, out of the 8, and out of the number, 8 were found to be positive, 251 were negative and 3 were still waiting for results. Dr. Noor Hisham also said the 125th death case involved a 64-year-old Filipino man with a history of heart disease. Meanwhile, he said the 5 import cases involved 2 locals and 3 non-citizens who were allowed to enter Malaysia. In the meantime, Dr. Noor Hisham said another 27 cases had fully recovered, taking the number of recovered cases to 8,644, or 96.3% of the total number of cases. He said the total number of active cases with COVID-19 infections is 207. Now, they have been isolated and receiving treatment, adding that 3 cases were being treated at the intensive care unit and 1 required respiratory support. The Malaysian Construction Industry Development Board, CIDB, inspected 15 construction sites nationwide yesterday, with 1 being issued with a warning for not complying with the Standard Operating Procedure, the SOP, during the Recovery Movement Control Order, or the RMCO, while 2 sites were not in operation. Senior Minister for Security Cluster, Dato' Sri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, in a statement today said CIDB conducted inspections at 15 sites in Kedah, Kelantan, Sabah and Sarawak. Meanwhile, he said all 19 construction sites ordered to be closed by the CIDB previously have been allowed to fully operate again. This was after all the sites had complied with the stipulated SOP and guidelines. Sarawak Police will set up roadblocks in Simunjan and Sri Aman beginning midnight tonight until 14th August following the recent spike of COVID-19 infections in several districts in the state. Now, Sarawak Deputy Police Commissioner Dato' Dev Kumar said this was following the decision made by State Disaster Management Committee, or SDMC, to restrict movement between Zone 1, that's red or yellow zone, and Zone 2, which is the green zone. Now, Dato' Dev said currently Zone 1 covers Kuching, Samarahan and Serian, adding that movements between Kuching, Padawan, Samarahan, Simunjan, Serian, Bau and Lundu districts are allowed without the need for a police permit. In a statement today, he also said that movements from Simunjan to Sri Aman via Triso Ferry or via Jalan Serian, Sri Aman are not allowed. However, Dato' Dev said exemption would be given to those on official duties, essential service workers, those paying their respects to deceased family members or visiting family members who are critically ill, and people seeking medical treatment. While he added that those facing such situations could apply for a police permit from the nearest police station to obtain permission to cross zone, while government officers and essential service employees are required to produce confirmation letters from their respective companies, employers or heads of department. Coming up, a ministry to create specific legislation to protect local music industry. Well, Housing and Local Government Minister Zuraida Kamarudin said a law to address issues including racial discrimination in the property market will be brought to Parliament early next year. Speaking to reporters after an event at the Pandan Fire and Rescue Department station, well, she said the law, known as the Residential Tenancy Act, or RTA, was still being drafted.
we expect that to finish by somewhere around end of this year, I think, because we are using per consultant to the, I think, if I'm not mistaken, from UITM or which university is doing it for the preparation of the RTA. It's a process, I think, as in AG and everything we complete. So by next year, probably end of the year or next year, then we bring into Parliament. Yeah.
Next year.
No, and by early next year.
In January, Zuraida said the RTA would help address racial discrimination following incidents of landlords refusing to accept tenants due to their ethnicity. She said then that the new law would follow similar legislation in Scotland. Well, meanwhile, Zuraida, who is also former PKR vice president, said she is ready to face the challenge thrown down by her former party to defend the Ampang parliamentary seat, which is currently held by her in the next general election. The independent MP, who now uses the Bersatu platform, is also not afraid of PKR's dare to reclaim the seat while welcoming her former party's candidate to contest in a healthy manner for the seat which she won on a PKR ticket at GE14.
Saya sungguh berbangga kerana keadilan memilih Ampang untuk mengadakan program mereka, program pelancaran penerangan ni. Selama ni mereka tidur dan sudah bangkit. Alhamdulillah kerana kita profesional, kita akan bertanding secara sihat dan kita akan berdepannya dengan sihat juga, dan insyaAllah saya sangat welcome untuk mereka datang, kerana kalau tidak dia tidur, dan lepas tu saya juga minta jangan tertinggal kawasan mereka masing-masing.
She said this to reporters after a working visit to the Hulu Langat Zone Fire and Rescue Department's sacrificial ritual program today. She was commenting on a recent statement by PKR Information Chief Datuk Sri Samsul Iskandar Muhammad Akin that PKR would take back the parliamentary seat. Apart from the Ampang parliamentary seat, PKR also wants to reclaim the Gombak parliamentary seat currently held by former PKR Deputy President Datuk Sri Muhammad Azmin Ali. The sacrificial ritual program benefited 6,000 recipients through the distribution of meat involving 60 cows. The Communications and Multimedia Ministry, KKMM, plans to create specific legislation which will be responsible for and protect the national music industry. Minister Dato' Saifuddin Abdullah said the music industry currently did not have any specific legislation or organisation compared to the film industry, which has the Malaysian National Film Development Corporation, or FINAS Act 1981. As such, Dato' Saifuddin said he would appoint officers to prepare the early draft, which is expected to be ready by the end of this year, apart from going through the consultation process with the stakeholders, especially those from the industry.
Dia memerlukan banyak perbincangan, kerana dia bukan hanya satu kelompok saja dalam muzik ni. Dia ada label, dia ada penyanyi, ada komposer, ada penulis lirik, ya. Jadi dia ada beberapa kelompok besar yang harus dibawa. Dan kita tak nak pula nanti ada yang tertinggal, tak dirujuk. Jadi pada saya yang pentingnya ialah kita ada working draft. Istilah dia ialah working draft. Once dah ada working draft, then kita boleh edar, boleh buat siri perbincangan.
Speaking to reporters after attending a sacrificial ritual at Masjid Salahuddin Al-Ayub in Mahkota 15, Kuantan, Pahang today, he said the proposal to create specific legislation had also been voiced by local music enthusiasts, including leading musical figures, during a series of meetings held with industry players. Muslims perform downsized Hajj pilgrimage amid COVID-19 pandemic. That and more coming up in our foreign segment. Well, France's economy slumped a record 13.8% in the second quarter as businesses bore the brunt of a strict COVID-19 lockdown that slammed consumer spending. Well, the seasonally adjusted drop in gross domestic product or GDP from the first quarter was not as steep as many analysts had expected, but worse than the performance of most of France's Eurozone peers. The INSEE statistics agency today said France's GDP's negative development in first half of 2020 is linked to the shutdown of non-essential activities in the context of the implementation of the COVID-19 lockdown between mid-March and the beginning of May. The agency also revised the figure for the first quarter when lockdowns just started to be implemented to a 5.9% contraction from the 5.3% it had previously estimated. The French economy has now shrunk for 3 consecutive quarters, a recession that analysts say is likely to persist even as spending begins to revive. Household consumption, a main driver of the economy, tumbled 11% during the quarter. Well, Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, today announced that local elections planned for September would be postponed because COVID-19 cases have surged in the international finance hub, a move that will infuriate democracy supporters. Well, the opposition was hoping to win a historic majority in the Legislative Council, where only half the seats are directly elected and the other half stacked with pro-Beijing figures. Lam's move comes after 12 pro-democracy candidates were disqualified from running in the poll on reasons including perceived subversive intentions, opposition to a new national security law, and campaigning to win a legislation blocking majority. Well, the poll would have been Hong Kong's first official vote after Beijing imposed a sweeping new security law that critics say aims to quash dissenting voices in China's freest city and bring the semi-autonomous territory on a more authoritarian path. Well, mass pilgrims scaled Saudi Arabia's Mount Arafat yesterday to pray and repent in the climax of this year's Hajj, the smallest in the modern times after massive crowds in previous years. Well, a tight security cordon has been erected all around the foot of the rocky hill outside Makkah, also known as Jabal al-Rahmah, or Mount of Mercy, for the high point of the annual event. Well, pilgrims donning masks and observing social distancing as Saudi authorities enforce tough restrictions to prevent a COVID-19 outbreak embarked on the climb to the summit for Quran recitals and prayers to atone for their sins. Well, sprayed with water sprinklers to beat the desert heat, the pilgrims raise their palms skywards as they climb the slopes of the hill where Muslims believe Prophet Muhammad gave his last sermon. The scene was strikingly different to last year's Hajj when a sea of pilgrims ascended Mount Arafat, marshaled by tens of thousands of stewards in a bid to prevent any crushes. The Hajj, one of the 5 pillars of Islam and a must for able-bodied Muslims at least once in their lifetime, is usually one of the world's largest religious gatherings. But only up to 10,000 people already residing in the kingdom are participating in this year's Hajj pilgrimage, compared with 2019's gathering of some 2.5 million from around the world. Afghans offered prayers marking the Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha today as a 3-day ceasefire between Taliban and government forces began, with many hoping the truce will lead to peace talks at the end of nearly 2 decades of conflict. A car bomb that killed at least 17 people in the country's east just hours before the ceasefire started underlined the scale of the challenge that lies ahead, although the Taliban denied any involvement. The halt in fighting is slated to last for the duration of Eid al-Adha and is only the 3rd official truce in nearly 19 years of war. As the ceasefire commenced, hundreds of Muslims went to mosques across the capital where they were patted down by armed guards before going inside. There were no immediate reports of any fighting in the country. President Ashraf Ghani and the Taliban have both signaled that peace talks could begin straight after Eid al-Adha, and there are widespread calls for the warring parties to extend the ceasefire. Under a deal signed by the Taliban and the U.S. in February, intra-Afghan talks were slated to start in March, but were delayed amid political infighting in Kabul and as a contentious prisoner exchange dragged on. Coming up in sports, Malaysian Gp cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, one of the most exciting races in the Motorcycle Grand Prix or MotoGP World calendar, the Malaysian Gp, which was scheduled to be held from 30th October to 1st November, has been cancelled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. MotoGP governing bodies, the International Motorcycling Federation, FIM, International Road Racing Teams Association, IRTA, and Dorna Sports announced in a joint statement today that apart from the race at the Sepang International Circuit, SIC, they have also cancelled the Argentina and Thailand GPs. SIC CEO Azhan Shafriman Hanif, while clearly disappointed with the cancellation of Malaysian GP for the first time in over 20 years, hopes to come back bigger and better in 2021.
I'm sure this is sad news for MotoGP fans in Malaysia and all over the world who have made the event to what it is today. We have seen an increased number of spectators for the Malaysian Grand Prix year on year, and we thank all the fans and partners for their continuous support. The best thing to do right now is to keep supporting our local boys and team who are still competing in the championship.
The Malaysian GP has been held in Southeast Asia since 1991, the longest in the region, and the SIC has been a permanent fixture on the calendar since taking over from the Shah Alam Circuit and Johor Circuit in 1999. Well, Harimau Malaya will zero in on the three remaining matches of the 2022 World Cup and 2023 Asian Cup Group G qualifying round in October and November. Well, Football Association of Malaysia FAM Secretary General Stuart Ramalingam said the cancellation of the ASEAN Football Federation or AFF Suzuki Cup Championship this year following the COVID-19 pandemic had eased the task of the national squad handler Tan Cheng Ho to draft out the best preparation for the qualifying round. Stuart today said Cheng Ho would be calling the players for centralized training scheduled in mid-September before meeting Bahrain in a warm-up match in the Gulf nation in early October. And after the Bahrain encounter, he said the national team would be flying to United Arab Emirates, the UAE, to face the host side in a second qualifying round game on 8th October. He added that the team will return home for a friendly against Kuwait at the National Stadium in Bukit Jalil in November. However, the Asian Football Confederation is still monitoring the COVID-19 pandemic situation before deciding further on the friendly match. Meanwhile, Stuart said FAM would be holding further discussions with the Malaysian Football League, MFL, as the cancellation of the AFF Suzuki Cup had eased the local football calendar for the next season. Based on the original plan, AFF had proposed to hold the AFF Suzuki Cup from 23rd November to 31st December while maintaining the home and away format introduced in 2018. However, the AFF Suzuki Cup Task Force Committee, which held an online meeting on Friday, decided to put the tournament to 2021 following a rise in COVID-19 cases at ASEAN and global levels. After facing UAE in Dubai, Malaysia are scheduled to host Vietnam at the National Stadium on 13th October before completing the qualifying round against Thailand in Bangkok on 17 November. Malaysia are in the second spot in Group G of the qualifier with 9 points after playing 5 matches. Well, a Saudi Arabian-backed consortium has ended its bid to buy Newcastle United. Well, the group, which included Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, PIF, PCP Capital Partners and Reuben Brothers, had agreed a £300 million deal to buy the club from Mike Ashley in April. The deal was still being scrutinized under the Premier League's owners and directors test, and it is understood that PIF ran out of patience. The consortium said it was with regret that it had pulled out. Amanda Savalli, the British businesswoman behind PCP Partners, said she was upset for the club's supporters. A statement from the investor group said due to the unforeseeable prolonged process, the commercial agreement between the investment group and the club's owners expired and the company's investment thesis could not be sustained. The consortium's withdrawal could pave the way for a takeover by American entrepreneur Henry Morris, who has registered his interest in Newcastle and remains extremely keen for the acquisition to happen. Well, Hertha Berlin midfielder Lucas Toussaint is out to make for lost time and help drive his new side to the upper reaches of the Bundesliga. The 23-year-old moved from Lyon to Hertha this summer, but he has not played since early March because the 2019-2020 French top flight season was abandoned due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Toussaint, though, is keen to get going again and to take on an intriguing, fresh challenge in the German capital. Hertha's new recruit said after being presented to the local media for the first time on Thursday that Bundesliga is a league that has a lot of good teams, a strong level and high intensity. The former France under-21 captain played against RB Leipzig in the 2019-2020 UEFA Champions League, but two dramatic group stage meetings with Hoffenheim from the season before, a 2-2 draw and a 3-3 draw, gave him his first taste of what German football is all about. Toussaint says he got further information on German football from former France under-21 colleagues like Leipzig pair Dayot Upamecano and Ibrahima Konate, as well as Jean-Philippe Mateta and Moussa Niakate of Mainz. The new arrival watched Hertha end the 2019-2020 campaign comfortably in 10th position after Bruno Labbadia oversaw a vast improvement after taking over in April.
Well, Swiss prosecutors have launched legal proceedings against FIFA President Gianni Infantino. It is in relation to an alleged secret meeting the head of World Football's governing body held with the Swiss Attorney General Michael Loba.
Loba last week offered to resign after a court said he covered up the meeting and lied to supervisors during an investigation by his office into corruption surrounding FIFA. Both have denied any wrongdoing. FIFA said Infantino and the governing body would, quote-unquote, cooperate fully with this investigation. In a statement released through FIFA, Infantino said, as the president, it has been his aim from day one to assist the authorities with investigating past wrongdoings at FIFA. Loba's office said he officially tendered his resignation on Tuesday, with his last day of active duty set for 31st August. It comes after Special Prosecutor Stefan Keller was appointed in June to review criminal complaints against the two men and others. He found indications of criminal conduct related to their meetings, the authority overseeing the office of the Attorney General OAG said. The OAG said it had taken note of the development, adding Loba would make statements to parliamentary committees if necessary.
And on to motorsports, Formula One driver Sergio Perez has tested positive for COVID-19 and will miss this weekend's British Grand Prix. The 30-year-old Mexican is the first driver to test positive for the virus since the World Championship made its delayed start in Austria earlier in July with strict testing protocols.
Perez's team Racing Point said the driver will likely be replaced by either fellow Mexican Esteban Gutierrez or Belgian Stoffel van Doorn for Sunday's race, the fourth round of this season's truncated calendar. Earlier, Racing Point said that Perez had returned an inconclusive COVID-19 test. Formula One has a strict protocol for all involved at the Grand Prix, with personnel tested before each event and every 5 days. The F1 season has so far seen more than 15,000 tests. Until Thursday, there had been only 2 positive results, both of which were for local setup staff. Racing Point said Perez had not returned to Mexico since the Hungarian Grand Prix 10 days earlier. Speaking before the COVID-19 delayed season began in Austria, Formula One chairman and chief executive Chase Carey said the sport would not cancel an event if a driver returned a positive test. Perez, who made his F1 debut in 2011, is 6th in the 20-driver championship after 3 rounds.
Well, that concludes this evening's news at 10. In our top story, Eid al-Adha celebrated a new normal for Muslims nationwide. Well, before we go, we would like to wish our Muslim viewers Selamat Hari Raya Eid al-Adha. Enjoy your holidays and please adhere to the SOP. Join us again at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. I'm Amin Carlos. Stay tuned to Saluran Berita RTM and have a pleasant evening.